Originally I was actually going to join the Marines, and I went and spoke with a Marine recruiter. I asked him, why the Marines? They're like, we're the toughest branch. We don't sleep in hotels. We sleep in foxholes, and you get dirty, and work out every single day. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I went and talked to the Air Force. I was like, why the Air Force? They're like, dude, we have hotels. We have AC, offices, really good food. And I was like, say no more. Like, that's the kind of military I want to join.
Welcome to Contentious Talks, the weekly podcast where we talk to influencers, celebrities, politicians, and everyday people to show that we all have unique opinions, and that's a great thing. I'm your host, Ryan Malinowski, and this week we are talking to Ante Webb. How you doing, Ante?
Doing pretty well, thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, my first name is Ante, but I tend to go by Drew. Middle name's just a little bit easier to spell and remember. When I go to Starbucks and I tell them my name's Ante, you don't even want to know what they write on the cup. But I hail from the great state of Michigan. I was born in a city called Grand Rapids, which is actually the second biggest city in Michigan behind Detroit. At the tender age of 19, I went off and joined the Air Force. I got to travel to a couple different places, such as Texas, Missouri. The last base I was stationed at was in Georgia, which is how I ended up here. And now I'm sitting in a car with a guy I barely know, talking on his podcast.
Cool. So, grew up in Michigan. Did a stint in, I'm guessing, San Antonio because you were in the Air Force?
Correct. My basic training was in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. I think that's the only place to do basic training for the Air Force, right?
Correct, yeah. Different branches will have different places, but the Air Force just has one.
So everybody goes to San Antonio if you're in the Air Force.
Correct.
Moved around a bit, ended up in Georgia and stayed in Georgia, huh?
Yes. I enjoy the weather down here a lot better than I do up in Michigan, so
okay.
I decided to stay.
So why the Air Force?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a really good friend of mine who was actually joining the Marines, and I had never ever considered the military. I actually used to be pretty anti-military, pretty anti-gun. But when a really good friend of mine joined, I decided to hear him out. I wanted to hear his reasons why he joined. It just sounded like a really cool situation because I myself, I was never a huge fan of school. And so the thought of going to college, doing 4 more years directly out of high school really just didn't interest me. And I thought that this could be a great way to get out of doing that. And then no one's also going to judge me and think that I'm a failure to launch because I joined the military. It's a great thing. So, originally I was actually going to join the Marines, and I went and spoke with a Marine recruiter. I asked him, why the Marines? They're like, we're the toughest branch. We don't sleep in hotels. We sleep in foxholes, and you get dirty, and work out every single day. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I went and talked to the Air Force. I was like, why the Air Force? They're like, dude, we have hotels. We have AC, offices, really good food. And I was like, say no more. Like, that's the kind of military I want to join.
So you did your part. You did your service to your country, huh?
Yes. So it was really just quality of life. The Air Force really does have the best quality of life. So that was really the deciding factor. And overall, I think I did choose the right branch.
Okay, awesome. What did you do in the military?
Well, when I first joined the military, I was a military cop. Security forces is what we called it in the Air Force.
Okay.
I was stationed at a nuclear base, so my primary duty was really just a glorified security guard, making sure nobody tried to steal the nukes, which they never did. So a lot of my day was just watching grass grow. I actually had the opportunity to, after a couple years there, a year and a half, I actually got the opportunity to work full-time in the armory on base, which was a lot of fun. So I got to work with guns all day. I was basically in charge of, the accountability, making sure that, only the people that were certified on certain weapons got them, and making sure that we got all the weapons back at the end of the day and we weren't missing any ammunition. Also got to work the range too. So in the military, we obviously have to stay qualified on our weapons, shoot a couple times a year. So being in the Armory, I got to actually get certified as one of the range instructors, and go on the range and help people, teach them how to shoot, which was really fun. But after my time as a military cop, I then retrained to become a paralegal in the military, and I worked in criminal law, which in the military we have our own court system and everything. So basically my job was to get the bad people in the military out, and that was honestly a lot of fun. That was probably my favorite duty in the military, is being a paralegal.
Awesome. How long were you in?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah, absolutely. You said when you were younger, you used to be pretty big anti-gun, which is why you really had never considered the military. What I assume your stance has changed based on that statement. What kind of changed your mind on that, and what do you believe about that now?
I think it was, since it was my best friend in high school, he was joining the military, and I guess I had nobody close to me who had ever joined the military before, so I wasn't even open to hearing him out. But having such a close friend of mine join, I just asked him, why are you doing it? What are the reasons? And when he was kind of telling me about the military, my preconceived ideas of it really weren't true. And I think a lot of people don't realize what the military is actually like. I think a lot of people's perceptions, come from movies and television shows, and it's really much different. So no, yeah, my stance has definitely changed. I'm definitely, I consider myself a pretty patriotic person, and I definitely support the military. While I always didn't have the most fun while I was in, I definitely don't regret doing it. I'd probably never do it again, but I'm very, very proud that I did it. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But no, I definitely support the military now. As I say, one of my, got pretty familiar with guns in the military. Figured out that, truly is, guns don't kill people. It is people that kill people. So it kind of changed my perspective on everything. And honestly, in the military, you just meet all these different types of people from different walks of life that honestly kind of broadened my horizons and made me a more open person, more well-rounded. Because I would say that my whole life I was kind of around just a certain group of people, so I never really got to hear ideas that challenged my own. So it was really I guess the catalyst was my friend joining the military. And as I got in and as I started to talk to more people, I guess my opinions slowly started to change over time.
Gotcha. So it's pretty early in the podcast, and you've already used up your one cliche for it. So good job.
What's that?
That guns don't kill people, but people kill people.
Okay.
So way to go.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you're pretty patriotic now.
Yes.
Kind of in regards to talking about being supportive of the military, supportive of guns and whatnot. Do you believe in order to be a patriot that you need to be supportive of those things?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I think that's the beauty of America. you can we have freedoms here, and no matter what you believe in, you have the ability to believe in it, and that's why I think it's so great about America. I think that there should be a healthy respect for those who choose to serve their country. But I also think that it's great that we live in a place where you don't necessarily have to support them, and you can say whatever you want. You can believe in whatever you want. I'm going to think you're a dick, but it's a beautiful thing that you can believe in that. So no, I would stand up for anybody's beliefs, even if they don't agree with my own. So no, I don't believe in order to be a patriot, you need to necessarily support the military, necessarily support guns. But I think it would definitely be a good idea.
Why do you believe that?
Why it would be a good idea?
Yeah.
Because those people that are serving the country are defending those freedoms that you're able to utilize every single day. So whether or not you necessarily agree with war, or whether or not you necessarily believe in the military, I guess you kind of got to know that it's a necessary evil. Because honestly, I can understand the other side. I can understand why people don't always like what the military does and the missions, and there's definitely been, some terrible things that the military has done, and there are definitely some terrible people in the military. But I think overall it's necessary.
Right on. You had mentioned that your understanding of the military mainly came from movies and media and that type of thing.
Yes.
As you gained a better understanding, what did you find were the main differences between what Hollywood showed us and the actuality of it?
Well, I thought, one, that, the classic perception of basic training, that you were going to get yelled at all the time, that you were going to get, put on your face, forced to do push-ups and hard labor, and they were going to, throw you against a wall. One, I thought, not only was basic training going to be like that, I thought that was just going to be, your life 24/7. You were always going to get yelled at. You were always going to, get forced to, work out. And I thought everybody was infantry. I thought everybody had a gun. I thought everybody went to war. I thought everybody was just bullet fodder. But, that definitely isn't the case. I mean, there's a plethora of jobs in the military, and some aren't that much different from their civilian counterparts. I mean, there's actual office jobs. My second job in the Air Force was an office job. I worked in air conditioning all day after I was done being a cop in the Air Force. I never touched a gun again. So it's and I barely got yelled at. So you definitely get yelled at a lot in basic training, don't get me wrong, but they're just rules that I never thought existed. Like, they're not allowed to swear at you, which was interesting because I thought I was going to get, cussed out on a daily basis. I thought they didn't care about that in the military, but no, that's one of the rules. Another rule in basic training was that they could never, if your military training instructor wanted to make you work out, they had to work out with you. So, like, if you were going to do push-ups, your military training instructor had to do them with you, just to avoid, it was kind of accountability to make sure that they didn't push you to exhaustion. Because obviously, if the military and training instructor couldn't do it, he couldn't make you do it too.
Interesting.
They could never touch you. They could never lay hands on you. So yeah, I realized that the military has really, really strict rules, and they do try to ensure everyone's safety the best they can.
Awesome. So what was your life like growing up?
My life growing up was interesting. It was I feel like in my it was kind of weird because towards the beginning of my life, I would say it was pretty dysfunctional. I had like a pretty normal stint in the middle, and then I kind of towards my early to mid teenage years became pretty dysfunctional again. I think a lot of it had to do with with my father. Me and him are kind of polar opposites, and I kind of attribute the dysfunction to the times that he was around.
Gotcha. What are the big differences between you and your dad?
Well, my dad, probably the biggest difference is that my dad has really been a career criminal his whole life. Been in and out of jail probably 5, 6, 7 times. My dad had never actually graduated high school. My dad had a great disdain for law enforcement. He never really was able to support his family, hold down a job. He had struggled with addiction, unfortunately. So I never really felt super close to him. And I never really allowed myself emotionally to get close with him for those reasons.
So he was kind of just dad in title, huh?
Correct. I would always kind of, when I would, talk to my mom about my father, I would never call him by my father. I would always tell my mom, "Your ex-husband," kind of out of spite,
Sounds like something you would do.
Yes.
Gotcha. So yeah, 2 completely different lifestyles there, huh?
Yes.
One
very.
career criminal, one, where you started out when you became an adult, you went in the military.
Yes.
Interesting. Are your parents still in the picture in life?
I have a very good relationship with my mom. I still talk to her every single day, even though she lives, half a country away from me, or half the country away.
Every mom out there right now is saying, "Oh, why can't my son be more like Ante?"
I know, right? I am the perfect child.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But unfortunately, my dad did pass away a couple months ago.
Okay.
So he's even prior to that, I hadn't talked to the man in about I want to say 6 or 7 years.
Oh wow.
So I was never really close with him either.
So you hadn't talked to him since before you went into the military, really?
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. So what was it like to receive that news then, as a young person?
Talking about when my father passed away.
Yes.
So it was definitely it was sad, but I can't say that it was a surprise. Just the kind of lifestyle that he lived. He kind of, it was something that was to be expected. I always thought it was either going to be some sort of overdose in drugs, or he was going to end up with the people that he hung around with, he was going to end up getting shot and killed, and it ended up being the latter, which is what happened. So I never I wouldn't say that it was I wouldn't say my reaction was normal, because my mom had called me, and even though they're no longer together, she still considered him a friend, and so she was hysterical and crying, and she told me, I was more concerned for her. I wanted to console her, but I wasn't torn up about it. I wasn't crying. It was definitely sad, but I can't really say that I was surprised.
Gotcha. So living in Georgia, what do you do now?
So now I am a outside sales representative for a home remodeling company, making more money than I ever thought I would do at this age.
Okay.
So definitely a change of pace from what I've been doing my entire life.
So you're in sales?
Correct.
Awesome. Why did you pursue a career in sales after the military? That seems a little bit polar opposite from each other.
Yeah, well, prior to me joining the military, I did have some sales experience. My mom actually works in hotels up in Michigan, so that was my first job, working in a hotel. I also worked at Best Buy for a little bit, which is absolutely nothing like the sales that I do now. But I enjoyed what I did, and while I was in the military, while I did enjoy being a law enforcement officer, and I did enjoy being a paralegal, I realized that it just really wasn't my favorite thing. It really wasn't for me. So I kind of wanted to give back to what I was doing before the military, and I know that the earning potential in sales is quite high. And after getting out of the military and leaving a safety net, I never had to worry about bills. I never had to worry about losing my job, because I know the military would always be there to help. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I found a job that I was going to be able to have financial security, especially living in Atlanta, where the cost of living is higher compared to some other places in the country. So I guess it was a combination of the fact that I had a little bit of experience in sales and enjoyed it, and obviously the earning potential.
Gotcha. So you're young, single, and making a lot of money, huh?
Yes.
I think that wraps the podcast up. How can all the ladies get in touch with you?
They can hit me up on Roblox or Fortnite. No.
There we go. So you're into video games then?
Yes.
Why video games?
It's a good question. Ever since I was super young, I've been into video games. That was kind of always been an obsession of mine. I've always probably spent a healthy amount of time playing video games. That was also, when growing up, that's how my mother would punish me as well. She would never, send me to timeout. She wouldn't hit me. She knew that the real kicker, the real way to get me to learn my lesson was to take my video games away. So it's always been a way to occupy my time. It's always been something I've been good at as well, and I love doing things that I excel at, because I'm not a huge fan of losing. So growing up, I always felt that I guess it was also just a good way to, to pass time and to, I don't know how to explain it. It just felt perfect for my situation because, probably from the age of 2 to the age of around 13, I believe, my dad was actually in prison, but my parents were still married. So we would often, probably every weekend we'd drive up to go visit him. And usually my dad was nowhere close. He was, in a prison, sometimes 5, 6, 8 hours away. And so I remember, in the car rides, needing something to do. So I'd always have my Game Boy Advance, or, be waiting in the lobby, waiting to go back there to see him. So I'd always be playing my video games. I remember, in the early years of my life, just nothing was, I didn't really have any stability. I remember my mom was bouncing back and forth between jobs. So I was living on, different family members' couches and staying in different places. So I really didn't have very many friends of my own. So I guess video games was there to kind of fill the void. I could just, hang out with myself and entertain myself during those times as well. So I guess it just kind of was ingrained in me from a young age, and it's still a hobby I enjoy today.
Gotcha. So are you a console gamer? Are you a PC gamer?
So I have a console. I play my Xbox, but I prefer the PC. That's probably my favorite gaming system.
Awesome.
But no, I own both.
What genre do you typically play? Like first-person shooter, RPGs? What do you like to do?
I would say that probably the most games that I play are strategy games.
Okay.
I think those are pretty fun, but I do like first-person shooters as well, like the old Call of Duty, Fortnite. I even play Dead by Daylight. It's not really a shooting game, but I'd say strategy is probably my favorite. But then the first-person shooters are probably a close second to that.
Okay. So you mainly do PC gaming?
Correct.
Okay. And what do you play on there?
So Dead by Daylight, I'll play Overwatch, I'll do Fortnite, I play StarCraft 2, Diablo 3, Friday the 13th, that game is pretty fun. I play a shit ton of Steam games. Probably have like 30 different games on Steam. Honestly, I'm pretty much down for anything. I have a habit of buying games and then playing them for an hour and then just never playing them again.
That's what I always used to do when I played. I'd buy a game, play it for a day or two, and then get bored of it. Get like 70% of the way through the campaign and be done.
Exactly.
And then I wouldn't pick it up again for months. I'd play it for an hour or two again. I'd be like, all right, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm finished. So
basically,
growing up, what type of games did you play? You said you had a Game Boy Advance.
Oh yeah, I would play. I think Pokemon was my favorite game. Oh yeah, and Yu-Gi-Oh. I was big into those games. I think I owned like 6 or 7 different Pokemon games. But I feel like growing up, everybody played Pokemon. I think that was just like the go-to game when you're a young kid.
So you're a big nerd growing up.
I was. No, then I got right. I wanted to.
Wow. Okay, so
I didn't want to get bullied in school.
So you just played at home, is what you're saying, and didn't tell anybody.
that was kind of.
That tells me everything I need to know right there. Right on. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us, Ante.
No problem. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you have something to say? Then consider being on the show. Go to contentioustalks.com/guest and apply today. That's contentioustalks.com/guest to apply. Now back to the show. So next we're going to roll into everybody's favorite part of the podcast. We call it the Tough 12. There's 3 categories of questions, 4 questions in each category. And it's the point where it's consistent every single time. So every single guest gets these 12 questions, and we get different answers, and we get to learn about different people's opinions. All right?
Exciting.
So first category in the Tough 12 is politics.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Here's the first question.
Yes.
What is a fair society?
Well, I think you're going to be getting a very similar answer to me for probably a lot of these questions, and it depends. Um, it really just depends on what you mean, because I don't think that there's very few things are equal in this world, and very few things can truly be fair. So I guess when I hear that question, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is law and order. So what is what's a fair judicial system? What's a fair justice system? And I as you've heard with me explaining what I used to do, law has always been a topic that's interested me, and I guess I'm going to tackle this from two different ways. What's fair socially, and I guess what's fair legally. But I think that one thing I find interesting is that each country kind of has a different way of handling their judicial system and their justice system. And, I might be a little bit biased because, like I said, I'm a patriot and I'm an American. But I truly think that America is one of the most fairest justice systems that we have, that the world has. Obviously, it's not perfect, and like I said, nothing in this world is perfect, and there still leaves room for bias and human error, and people are wrongfully convicted. So I think that when I see things that are fair, because when I think about the American justice system, what makes it fair, I think it's the the fact that it's not just up to usually just not up to one person. We have everybody has a right to a jury of their peers. So it's getting multiple people's views, multiple people's opinions and consensus on a certain issue. So I think when we're talking about what is fair, I think that's kind of a similar theme that you'll find. I think that getting multiple people's opinions and multiple people's view on things are what's considered fair. Like I think the way that we, even when it comes to electing a president, how we vote, we don't have a monarchy, a king or queen. I wouldn't consider that fair. So I think when we're talking about fairness, I think that a democracy is important, and I think multiple people's opinion is important. And I think that everybody should have a say in something. I think that leads to to being fair. When I think about on the social side of things, what is fair, I think how we have laws that protect everybody, no matter what color, creed, religion. We all have a minimum wage. We all there are laws protecting one gender from making more than other genders. So when we're talking about a fair society, I guess those things that I was specifically mentioning are what I consider at least heading towards fair. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because nothing is perfectly fair, nothing is perfectly equal. But I guess those were just a few examples of what I think represents fairness, and at least here in America.
So while you were talking, what I heard as a general theme is kind of decentralized authority and protections in place for pretty much everyone on some level. Would you agree with that? I know it's a very broad kind of summary there, but
yeah, it is super broad. Because it also depends on the certain situation. Because I mean, there are situations that I can think of where there does need to be some central control, which I know again is another huge reason why I think America is one of the best forms of government out there. But yes, I guess if you could, if I had to fit it into a box, I guess that would be a good summary of what I said.
Sure, and operating from the kind of stance that you took, that nothing's really fair, or completely fair rather, is what you said. Obviously there's exceptions to pretty much every rule.
Of course.
With the exception, in my opinion, of a handful of them. Like, there's probably never a good time to just outright murder someone. Awesome.
Yes.
What is the number one issue facing humanity, society, however macro or micro you want to look through the lens.
What is the biggest issue facing society? That's a very, very good question. You know, I think that there's the obvious things. There's there's global warming. There's the coronavirus. There's current tensions with law enforcement. Current racial tensions going on right now. There's North Korea. There's Russia. There's China.
So everything's
everything. Yes, basically. I mean, honestly, the biggest issue. I mean, when it really boils down to, the biggest issue facing society is humanity itself. I mean, we're kind of, because when I mention all those issues, it somehow kind of one way or another links back to humanity.
Yeah, we're a bit masochistic, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would think that it's humanity itself. Ironically enough, that's kind of our biggest issue. We are. I think we are our own biggest enemy, and we kind of have to keep ourselves in check. So if I had to, pick one boogeyman, I would say that it's us. We are the issue. We are the problem.
So with that being said, then to rewind a second, but would you agree that if we just wiped humanity out, that would be a fair society?
No, because I think society is a very human thing.
So humanity is a prerequisite for society.
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha. Awesome. Do politics matter, and why?
Of course, politics matter. It's how it's dealing with the government. It's dealing with those who run the government, who serve. It's the laws that govern us. It's our livelihood. It's our life. It's without the government, without politics, we live in a drastically different world. And you can look at other nations, other countries, and you can see what happens when you don't have a strong government, or when your government is too strong. So politics are important because there are certain things that we rely on our governments for. So it's very, very important that the government is there to serve its people, and also when we have an entity that has a lot of power, it's easy for that entity to become corrupt as well. So you also want to be sure that you're aware of politics and what's going on to prevent that corruption from happening, and to make sure that you can live a happy and healthy life.
So how does the average American or citizen protect themselves from a government like that?
Talking about from a government from becoming corrupt?
Yeah.
It's as easy as casting your vote. It's as easy as staying informed about the events, what's going on. It's as easy as trying to I guess that's the biggest thing, making sure that you're voting, that you're electing those who you want to lead, and voting on different laws and different representatives. I think that's the best way to stop corruption at its core, is preventing those bad people from doing it. And I think that the government has a lot of checks and balances built into itself as well, which I think protects itself.
Well, you said it earlier, but it definitely sounds like you've got some pretty patriotic beliefs now.
Yes, that is fair.
Right on. All right, last question in politics here. What role should government play?
What role should government play? I think the number one role of the government is to protect its citizens and its people. But the government has, a lot of roles other than that. The government protects its citizens and its people by, obviously, there's the military, there's local law enforcement. They protect America's currency. They're also in charge of that. Making sure that inflation doesn't take over. Making sure that not every government does this. Making sure people are able to live, have a fair wage. Make sure that infrastructure is in place. Be it hospitals, be it the highway system. So the government plays, many, many roles, but the number one role, I think, is protecting its citizens, protecting its people, be it from foreign governments, be it from terrorists, be it from diseases, be it from, financial disaster.
So overall, how do you think the government has been doing recently in that category?
In terms of relating to the coronavirus, is that what you're referring?
Coronavirus, whatever you want to talk about.
It's interesting because obviously we have a Republican president right now, and traditionally Republicans don't believe in in a strong centralized government. They prefer that states have more power, and I think that that was kind of how the coronavirus was approached with our current administration. I think that the states were kind of left to handle themselves, which I think is interesting because you have states like California and Michigan who were super duper strict. You have more relaxed states such as Georgia, such as Florida, that were kind of the first to open up. They didn't really have as strict of rules. So it's kind of hard to judge the country, give it an overall grade when everyone was doing something very, very different. Obviously America leads the world right now in coronavirus cases, but we are one of the most populated countries, and also we are the most free country. And I think one of the downsides, if you want to call it a downside of freedom, is that when things like this happen, we're not like China. We can't just lock up all of our citizens, confine them to their homes. So it's kind of one of the if you want to call it a con of a free society, is that when a virus occurs, when something like this occurs, you're not going to have the same response as a country like China. So that kind of, I think, leads into why we have so many cases, because our government's not going to come in and force us in our homes. We're not forced to wear masks. We're not. It's not what America's about. We're a free country. So I think it's a balancing act of obviously protecting its citizens and making sure that this virus doesn't spread and doesn't kill people, but it's also making sure that we still have our freedoms at the end of the day.
So it's a cost to liberty then?
Correct.
There's trade-offs.
Correct. And I think that obviously it depends on the situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that the coronavirus has, compared to some of the other pandemics and some of the other conditions, diseases, things that have gone around, coronavirus doesn't. The mortality rate is not the worst. It's not when you compare it to something like Ebola, which thankfully was never widespread, but the fatality rate for Ebola was way higher than the coronavirus. So I think that obviously if something like let's say Ebola were to spread as wide and as vast as coronavirus did, I think that maybe the government should step in and maybe should play a little bit of a different role. I think it all just depends. I don't think that the coronavirus was the virus, was the disease to just broadly take away liberty, take away freedoms. But I'm not saying that maybe in the future there is a more deadly virus, a more deadly disease, where maybe the government does need to take more of a hard stance against it to protect its citizens. Because again, at the end of the day, I do believe that that's the number one role of a government, and to stay consistent with that logic. There are times where the government might need to affect our liberty. I just don't think that this coronavirus was it. But in the future, that opinion might change. There might be a time where the government does have to be a little bit more strict, a little bit more harsh.
All right, Ante, next category. You ready for this?
Yes.
Awesome. First question. This category is philosophy. Okay.
Fun.
First question.
Yes.
What is truth?
What is truth? Truth is the antonym of lie. It's something that actually happened. I don't know what you want from me. Truth is the real deal. You know, I think it's weird because, you know, the truths can be different depending on, you know, different people. I think that, you know, in order for it to be a lie, you need to consciously know it's not true. And I think that, you know, some things might be a lie to some other people, but it's the truth to some people. I think, you know, truth is something that is real to you, something that really happened, that you really believe, if that makes sense.
So, most truth would then be subjective? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe in absolute truths?
I very rarely believe in absolutes. So
very consistent answer with a worldview like that. I'm proud of you, man. Because if you would have said no,
mm-hmm.
I would have asked, is that absolutely true?
Exactly.
No, that's a very philosophical answer there. So good job. Good job. Right category to be philosophical. Yes. Way to go. Next question here. What do you believe about people's ability to change?
What do I believe about a people's ability to change? I think it depends on the person. It depends on what we're talking about too. I think there are certain things that obviously you can't change. There are certain, you know, genetic things that are a part of you.
Like what?
Your DNA. You know, you can't really change your DNA. You can't.
That's not where you were going to go with that.
What do you mean? What are you trying to say?
Nothing. I just didn't seem like where you wanted to go with that.
So
your DNA, okay.
Yeah,
can't change that.
Can't change that.
What else?
What else can't you change?
Yeah, what else do you believe you can't change? I mean, obviously on a biological level, I think most people would agree that you can't change biological things.
Correct. You know, I think that there are certain things that are hard to change, like, you know, given the story about my father, how he was, a drug addict and alcoholic. I think that addictions can change. I think that they're hard to change, and I think that it's one of those things where it kind of always is there, where it's easy to slip back into. You can change your appearance with plastic surgery. So I think it depends. It depends on the person too, because some people can change things more easily than others. Some people can't change at all. I think it all has to deal with, what's inside your head, mentally, your fortitude. So it just depends.
So do you believe that you can affect your ability to change, your fortitude, your desire, I guess? Do you believe that we have control over that?
Yes, to a point. I think it depends, because I think that, we all have different motivations, and I think that there are certain things that will motivate us more than other things. So, there might be a reason where you have a strong desire to change, or where you would be willing to change, but then there's other reasons where somebody might not. So I do think that we can control it. And I think it just not only depends on the person, but it depends on what's personally important to that person.
Got it. How do you explain consciousness?
So it depends on how it's being used and what you mean, because there's the state of being conscious, being awake, being alert. There is, when somebody talks about your conscience, as opposed to your subconscious, your active mind, what you're thinking about. Some people will talk about conscience in a sense that it's like your morals, your inner voice. So I guess it just depends on which way you're using the word.
So what ways could you use the word?
I just explained to you 3 different ways you can use the word.
So how would you define it in those 3 different ways then?
So there's your conscience, consciousness, you being awake, you being alert, you as opposed to being unconscious and not able to control your body, actively think. Again, there is.
So would you define that as 2 different categories of consciousness or consciousness?
I think that's one category, the state of being conscious as opposed to being unconscious.
Okay.
I think that there is also I think that a different category, even though it's very similar to the first category, is that as related to your subconscious, or something that you don't actively think about, that you don't actively do. Your breathing, your heartbeat, that's in your subconscious. Your ability to your ability to speak, I guess that would be considered your subconscious. Stuff you don't think about, stuff you actively do. And then there's things that you do think about, like a math problem. You need to consciously think about that, in order to do it. And then there's someone's conscience, your inner voice, your morals, your what drives you.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting too, because I recently read a study that not everybody has an inner voice. Some people think differently, which I think is interesting. Some people think in pictures, some people think in shapes, and some people's inner voice isn't their own voice. Some people's inner voice is like a different person's voice, which I think is super interesting.
Well, this is the last question in philosophy. You made it through 2 categories. It doesn't even look like you've broken a sweat. But what exactly makes you you? I know you try not to sweat as frequently as possible, so with the video games and everything.
Exactly, I'm lazy. What exactly makes me...
Just leaned right into it. Smart guy there.
What exactly makes me me? I mean, it's kind of, it's like a recipe. There's different, speaking of Italians and cooking. But, if you think of a human as different parts, there's your, obviously, your physical characteristics, your looks. That's part of what makes you you. That's how people usually identify you. There's the voice, the way you sound. Because I can identify certain people by the way they sound. I mean, even the way you smell. Everybody has a certain smell. And then there's obviously your personality, the way you think. The way you interact with people. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Your sense of humor. It's kind of like a giant cookbook, a giant pot. Different parts of you. Different. A conglomeration of different things. I think there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of different things that goes into different people. Yes.
Ingredients.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Next category, last category of the Tough 12.
Mm-hmm.
You're 2/3 of the way through, but this is the personal and religion category. Ooh. So, first question here in this category, what do you believe about God?
What do I believe about God? I don't know what to believe about God. I consider myself a very open person. I would never, if I would never say that, I absolutely believe that there is no God, because once again, I don't like absolutes. But religion has always been one of those things that I've had a lot of questions about. I don't usually get a lot of good answers about it. But there are so many religions out there. And obviously, here in America, Christianity being the largest religion. But when you think about it in the scheme of the world, Christianity isn't even the most popular religion. So what makes that religion right compared to other religions? We all have different ideas of who God is, what happens to us after death, and everybody thinks that they're right. But obviously not everybody can be right. So there's a lot of people who are wrong. So it's who do you believe? I mean, everybody claims they're right. Everybody has different origin stories for the world. And I mean, even when you look back in the past about past religions. I mean, there's the Greek gods and the Roman gods and things of those nature, which now we consider those myths, and it's people, the average person wouldn't believe in that. People would look at you like you're crazy. But I mean, back then, people actually believed in that stuff, and then that's they thought they were right, and that was their religion. But I think at least back then, people used religion to explain things that they couldn't understand, which I think is the root of a lot of religions. People, you think about, those ancient mythology. I mean, people needed gods that's why storms happened. That's why, the sun, that's why, there were tornadoes. That's where the oceans came from. There were different gods representing different things, gods of love, gods of, we needed that to explain things that we didn't understand. But obviously, as the world progressed and science got better, we started to understand why different things happened. And I think that science has kind of always been at odds with religion. And and that's kind of why a lot of the reasons why I have my doubts, because again, like I said, there are a bunch of different religions, and everybody can't be right, and your religions have changed over time. We haven't always had the same religions, and I do believe that at a core, I think religion was made to explain things that we didn't understand at the time. I mean, even when you think about a lot of the books that are in the Christian Bible, a lot of the stories, when you think about, things like Noah's Ark, and again, I have a very rudimentary understanding of a lot of the stories and things that go on in the Bible, but, when it came to explaining, it just doesn't seem something that's possible. I mean, like an ark that could hold every single species of animals. I mean, knowing now, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, of different species, of millions of different, and how could you ever fit all those onto a boat? How could you ever, get all those animals? How would they? It's logistically, it just doesn't make sense. But that story was there to explain, explain, how we got all these different types of animals. But it's so yeah, a long-winded answer. But I don't know what to believe about God. I don't know which God to believe in. I don't know who's right. I don't know who's wrong. I don't know. I don't know a lot of things.
I think that's fair. So, would you say that you believe there is a God, or would you say that you don't believe, or is it just a possibility in your mind?
I think it's a possibility. I would say I'm open to it, but I don't know if I have at least enough evidence in my mind to say that they're that there's more likely than not that there is a God, or that who that God may be.
Okay.
But I think it's possible.
So you sit somewhere between agnostic and atheistic.
Sure, yes, that's fair.
All right, second question here, kind of piggybacking a little bit on the first, but what do you believe happens after death?
That's a tough one. It kind of goes into my first answer, that there are a bunch of different societies, religions that all have different answers for what happens after death. Again, I don't know who to believe. In my mind, I just think it seems more likely that that when you die, that there's really nothing after that. At least in my mind, that's what I think makes the most sense. But again, it's something that you don't really know until it happens. I think again that as a society that as humans, we would like to believe that we don't ever truly die, that things continue. Either you get reincarnated, or that your soul moves on to live elsewhere. I think that it's a calming thought to people, because I don't think anybody really wants to die. I think that humans have always had a hard time accepting their mortality. So I think that a lot of people want it to be true that we don't necessarily die. So I think that's why people are more apt to believe in that and cling to it, because it's we are a hopeful species. But at least to me personally, I think it just makes more sense that when you're dead, you're dead.
So how does that thought make you feel? Does it affect you at all? Do you think about it?
I mean, I think it is. I do think about it. I mean, I think it's definitely not, a fun thing, but I think that it kind of dictates how I live my life and what I do, because I don't believe that there is no other place after death. So this is your one life, so this is your time to enjoy and get things done. I don't think that you're gonna. I don't think that there is a heaven, a Valhalla, a purgatory, anything. I don't think you get reincarnated. I think that you have one life to live. So that's kind of how I view it, and that's kind of I don't ever want to be on my deathbed in the future and feel like that I live regrets or feel like that I didn't get to do something. So I do think about it, but I kind of use that to motivate me to get out and try things and do things.
Take advantage of the time you have.
Yes.
Gotcha. So, what gives life its meaning then?
Again, it depends on the person. I think that we all have different goals, different aspirations. I think that a common theme you'll find is that for a lot of people we like to do things that give us enjoyment, that give us pleasure, that give us satisfaction. So I think that that's important, and those things are different depending on the person. I mean, some people think that for them the biggest sense of satisfaction and pleasure is family, getting married, having kids, raising people. Some people get satisfaction out of giving back to their community, volunteering, and that's what their meaning is. That's what their purpose is. Some people get money is important to people. Sometimes that's their goal. Find it professional success, financial success. That's their meaning. So I think it depends. Personally, to me, kind of relates to my previous answer. It's experiencing things and living life with no regrets. And when that time does come where I'm no longer on this earth, just being able to think back on life and thinking I had fun. So I guess that's the meaning of life to me. It's having fun.
All right, Ante. Here it is, brother. You made it to the end. Well, this is the last question of the top 12, the last question in the personal and religion category. What is love?
I mean, love comes in, many different degrees, many different forms. It's obviously an emotion. I think that love is something that is unique to humans. I think that other animals, other species can have an attraction to somebody. I think you can have a mate. I think it's more instinctual, and I think at its core, I think love is an instinct, because obviously as humans we have it behooves us to obviously multiply and have children and continue society, but I think it's a little bit more complex in humans. There's different types of love as well. I mean, you obviously have a love for a significant other, a spouse, a wife, a husband, a girlfriend, boyfriend. But I think you can love your friends, and obviously you love your family, but they're all very, very different kinds of love, hopefully, depending on where you live. But it's depending on the version of love, I think it depends on what it is. Because obviously when we're talking about a significant other, I mean, love has to deal with attraction, and love has to deal with commitment and what you'd be willing to do for that person. And it's admiring somebody. It's a very complicated question with a very complicated answer. It depends. It's the answer to everything.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ante, for that. You made it through the tough 12. Again, everybody's favorite part of the podcast. So, where can people find out more about you?
I'm on social media. Facebook, Instagram. All by my first and last name, Ante Webb. Look me up, find me. Hopefully, one day I become extremely rich and extremely famous. And then I'll have to, give you a gag order and sue you to get this taken off the internet so I don't get canceled 20 years from now. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I really appreciate your time. Next week on Contentious Talks.
So on the progressive side, if you're not 100% aligned with this belief system, then you're the enemy. If you believe, or if you're on the opposite side, then you're now the enemy of the other one. Like I to like a lot of my conservative friends, if I say Black Lives Matter, all of a sudden to like a lot of my ultra conservative friends, they think that I'm now this ultra progressive, liberal, whatever. I am now their enemy. To value people, you have to value their experience, even if their experience is at odds with your ideology. Because, like, I'll give you an example. So, like, my wife is half black. She was raised by her white dad, who's extremely white, and her mom wasn't really a part of the picture. And right now, she's kind of embracing the black side of her, which is kind of a little uncomfortable for me, mostly because, like, it's not really, uncomfortable is the wrong word. It's a new experience for me because, like, I've only known Ashley. I've never known Ashley who's, like, embracing full-on black culture, realizing that, hey, there's a part of her life that she actually missed, like, entirely in her life because her mom wasn't there. As a parent to an autistic child, the battle that I face is almost exclusively internally because of this. I don't know how my child will end up. The reality is, with all my kids, I don't know how they will turn out.
Sure.
But with a neurotypical child, you have a general idea.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Contentious Talks. Did you like the episode? If so, please consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family. To get notified about new episodes, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to connect more, like Contentious Talks on Facebook. To support Contentious Talks and for more content, consider joining the Contentious Collective for as little as $1 a month. To do so, visit contentioustalks.com today. Contentious Talks is produced, hosted, filmed, and edited by Ryan Malinowski. Contentious Talks, copyright 2020, all rights reserved.